We'll start by calling Dimitri Innovation Lab and Carolina Araya, who comes from Costa Rica.
Empiezo cuando sea. Usted me dice. La presentación.
Can we show the presentation?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Carolina Araya.
My name is Carolina Araya. I'm the founder of Dimitri Innovation. Demeter, it's a monitoring, agro-monitoring system, different from those before me. Our project was in prototype process, and now we're ready to start to go to the market. And the market is to do some field testing. So I will be sharing a bit about that. Oh, what this is about. So imagine if we can change an aspect when one's producing in agriculture, for instance, improving flowering of coffee. So the idea that we can, with precision agriculture, we can carry out this process. And what motivated us to do as well, climate change has affected farmers very much. They can no longer predict when the first rainfall will come or if there are droughts, and then plan the use of fertilizers, water usage, which nowadays, because of economic resources and natural resources, we have to take care of, and then reduce the gap between digital for the farmers. So we brought a solution, which is precision agriculture, as I said, based on data collection and analysis, and with the results to apply this at the field. And this business model is replicable, and it could be used in other crops, but for our testing purpose, we did it on coffee. This is a AI model with machine learning, and what we do is that it could be generalized and it could be applied to any type of crop. How do we do this? Well, with this development, we can include any hardware and software. We can include variables we need to measure to improve the yield. We need a satellite or phone connectivity for that. By having the data, and then the interpretation and recommendations would be the most important thing. And what we have created is a kit I'll be showing you to do this in the field. And what is this project about? Well, the project is that we developed a gateway or a radio base, which is this. It communicates with the different devices or sensors we created with language, which is LoRa-1, and this is the way it communicates anywhere in the field, and with satellite connection or cell phone connection, it goes to the cloud through that radio base, and then the farmer receives the data. We did have the opportunity to acquire funds to create the 3D lab. So we did it in-house. Our company has been developing technological solutions for 18 years that are exportable, but I started my research 2 years ago to focus on how we can use all that technology we've created and take it to the field. ONU mujeres, you and women, recommended to use coffee, which is the one that has the least investment in Costa Rica, and 30% of producers are women. So we had an additional gap there in technology. So with this project, we already have a lab with 3D printing where I can now make that hardware and software, and we developed a platform I'll be providing to the farmer to receive the data and then for us to interpret. This is all PLA printing or ASA, and we have temperature sensors. We have a humidity sensor. We also have a luminosity sensor, and we also have a relative humidity sensor. These are the ones we have developed, and as I said, we can adapt these to any type of crop. I couldn't bring these radio base, but the most important thing is radio base that communicates with any of the sensors we install. The challenge is in a field which is not as flat, something like a coffee plantation, to see how it actually works. With the only thing we request to apply it at a farm is to have connectivity. We provide the platform, and the idea is to train them for the idea is to measure by hectare, and once they have the data, to know how to correct or better guide what they're doing to have the least use of fertilizers and water. Our main users are would be any farmer who is open to receive technology. As we have seen, it's been difficult. Some are reluctant, but that's our main user. Early adopters were trying to seek coffee mills, coffee associations, producers who want to improve flowering and with these techniques, and therefore increase their production of coffee beans. Also, as far as impact or and sustainability, we offer a plan that since we are doing all the printing, we can recycle the material, the batteries that are required. For instance, in the temperature sensor, are rechargeable and they will last for 1.5 years. So every 1.5 years, we can recharge and there's no environmental contamination, increased productivity of the berry. We have proven that it can increase 20% berry production, and this would be more profits for the farmer. And how do we see ourselves going forward? Well, the idea is to be able to technify farms. We are seeking volunteers who would like to receive us in their farms, who have the necessary conditions to technify a hectare, and we could then run the pilot plan for 8 to 9 months, the coffee production cycle. We have tested in greenhouses with strawberry, and we've done several testing, but we don't have something concrete to sell to the market. And the next stage, which is almost ready, is disease prevention with drones, but we cannot develop that until the project is in operation. We are going to evaluate Central America. I visited El Salvador, Honduras to start evaluating, and in El Salvador we saw pineapple. So any agronomists who would like to share important variables they want to measure is what we can produce a sensor for, run the platform, and introduce the information. And due to all this, there's been other products we have developed while we locate those. This is the base of a hydroponic tower, which also has a software system, a smart software, and we are producing all the different pieces or parts. We have we have sensors that are also for mosquitoes, but we're in that process. So, having started 18 years ago with technology to evolve this AgTech has been the challenge, and we're about to achieve that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carolina, for that presentation. Very interesting. And now we have I think, space for questions. I'm sure someone might have a question. How are you? I want to ask which have been the main challenges, besides the one we discussed this morning in the working tables, which have been the technological challenges you've had in the implementation? Well, at technological level, we haven't had many challenges. I was discussing with some colleagues from Colombia. One of the things that would affect and feel, since we're providing these kits, we try to get support from eCafe for them to help us, because we want to guarantee the kits to give to any farm that wants to use it. And the challenge has been not knowing under what item they can insure. So the three insurance companies don't know how to insure. Uh, so we would like to install this in their farms or the cooperative, but insured for a cow not to damage it, or if it's stolen, because literally they're all mini computers inside, and this is the data we need. So that's been one of the challenges to ensure. But as far as technology, no, but the rest is a little bit of fear when the farmers have once we install it, and they have been reluctant. That's why we're going through our e-cafe, or people who are open to technology. And then at the beginning, when I started knocking doors, for some reason, they they figured it shouldn't be a woman doing that. So it was a little hard at the beginning. My question is, in Honduras, who did you contact in Honduras? In my case, my farm is available for that purpose. Thank you. Well, in Honduras, no, but I've been in Guatemala, and there we spoke with Ana Cafe, and Ana Cafe responded faster than E-Cafe here in Costa Rica. In El Salvador, I had the opportunity to participate in INCAE, where we started the project, and it turns out there's a Women in Coffee Association, IWCA is the acronym. Association of Women in Coffee started in Egypt, and there's 120 countries that are members. It's quality coffee for export. So initially, that was my niche, but obviously, we need more massive testing. So I will be going to Honduras. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. I love that. Question. You mentioned pineapple as at the end. Can you tell me very quickly about pineapple? Yeah, in pineapple, the studies we carried out is in flowering. The flowering process of coffee is the same flowering process in pineapple. So the process as such, the activities are similar. So the variables to be measured are similar. After developing this technology, the software, IoT, machine learning, and all that, which was the most difficult part, uh, if it's small or big, the device, it's okay. I mean, it's not different, and we can measure. So in pineapple, I can apply humidity, luminosity. These are very big fields and flat, and they're very good to measure. Perfectly flat, but in coffee, uh, it's not so. So you use also a variable, and we adapt it. And something I want to highlight is that it's all made in Costa Rica and Santo Domingo, Heredia. So all the way, the material is imported, but we produce all thing. We fabricate. We have IT people. We have product engineers. We have developers. So we have basically a committee of 18 nationals, and that's, I think we can provide very good follow-up and maintenance, because this is not something we cannot cover.
Muy bien, pues muchas gracias, Carolina.
Thank you very much, Carolina.
Bueno, gracias, Carolina.
Thank you, Carolina.
La siguiente
And the next
AgTech
AgTech
es
is
Smart Soil y
Smart
va a
Soil
presentar
and
Guillermo
will be
Andrés
presented by
Enfiso
Guillermo
Maldonado
Andrés
de
Elfiso
Paraguay.
Maldonado from Paraguay.
Bueno, ok, gracias. Ok, buenas tardes a todos,
Good
¿cómo están?
afternoon to everyone. How are you?
Bueno, mi nombre es Guillermo
My name
Enciso,
is
soy
Guillermo
el
Enciso.
fundador
I'm a
y jefe de
founder
investigación de
and
Smart
research
Soil.
head of Smart Soil.
Realmente, quien debió presentar
And
aquí era
who
nuestro
should have
CEO,
been presenting
pero
is
no
our
pudo venir,
CEO, but he
entonces
couldn't come.
estoy aquí
So I am
reemplazándolo.
here in his
Sin embargo,
place.
les
However,
comento, somos una
I'll
plataforma
share
de
that we're
predicción
a
de monitoreo de
prediction
enfermedades en cultivos
of and monitoring of
y tenemos
disease
un
in
trabajo,
crops
un
platform.
desarrollo
And
realizado
we have a
en el
development
cultivo de soja,
carried out in
específicamente
soy
en la roya asiática
specifically
de la soja,
and
una
a
enfermedad
Asian
devastadora. Para poner
disease,
en
which is
contexto,
devastating
Paraguay
disease. To
es un
put in
país donde
context,
se siembran 3 millones de
Paraguay,
hectáreas de
we
soja y
plant
esta
3
enfermedad
million
tiene
plants
el
of soy,
potencial
and
de
this
reducir rendimiento y
disease
generar pérdidas
reduces
de hasta el 90%
yield and
de la
losses up to
producción.
90% production
Pero no es un
loss.
problema
But it's
limitado a
not
Paraguay, sino que
limited only
también
to
si sumamos
Paraguay.
a la producción de
If
soja
we
blanca de
add
la roya también es un problema,
Brazil soy production, where
podemos
this
estar frente
rust is
a
also a problem,
una
we could
situación
be
de 40
facing
millones de hectáreas.
a situation of
Esto
40
también,
million
la roya también puede ser un
hectares
problema
of
en otros
loss.
países como
And this
Bolivia,
could also
Estados
be a
Unidos,
problem in Bolivia, and the
México y
US, and
otras partes
Mexico,
del mundo.
US, and other parts of
Entonces,
the
un
world.
problema que tienen
So,
los productores es
a
que
problem
tienen
producers
una carga
have is
financiera
that they have
con
a
el
financial
alto costo que
burden
implica aplicar
because of the high
fungicidas.
costs of
Además, existe
applying
una
the
presión por
fungicides.
parte de las empresas
Besides
hacia
that,
los
there's a
productores para la
restriction
compra
to
de insumos
producers
herbicidas.
on buying
Estos datos
these
los encontramos en un estudio publicado en una
fungicides, and
revista
this is part of a
justamente
study
costarricense,
that
Agronomía
was
Mesoamericana,
came out
por
in
ahí
Agronomía
pueden buscarlo.
Mesoamericana
Y
in Costa
encontramos
Rica,
que el costo de
and we found
aplicación
that the
de
cost of
fungicidas
applying
es de
fungicides
$32
is at
por hectárea
$32 per
por
hectare
aplicación.
per
Los agricultores
application,
paraguayos
and
realizan entre 4 a
Paraguayan
6 aplicaciones,
producers do
lo
between
que
4 and
eleva el
6
costo
applications, which increases the
del control,
cost
el
of
costo de
this
producción. Este
of
patógeno
production. And this
genera
pathogen
resistencia.
generates
Cada año hay
resistance.
una
Each
estimación hecha
year,
por
there's an
dos biólogos
estimate
japoneses,
made
que
by
está también
two
publicado en un
Japanese
artículo, que el
individuals, and
patógeno
it's
tiene
also
una
published that the
capacidad
pathogen has the
eh,
capacity
de resistir,
to
por lo tanto, la
resist
eficacia de control de
their
estos fungicidas
for
se
the
reduce
efficacy
entre
of
9 y
control of these
12%
fungicides is reduced
anualmente.
between 9 and
Eso
12%
hace que los
annually.
fungicidas
This
funcionen
makes these fungicides
menos, ¿verdad?
have
Entonces, ¿cuál es
less
nuestra solución? ¿Cómo
effectiveness. So,
hacemos
what's
nuestro
another
servicio?
solution?
Nosotros
What is our service about? Well,
instalamos
we
un
install
equipo a través
equipment
del cual monitoreamos
through which we
cultivos y
monitor crops,
predecimos
and we
enfermedades
predict
por medio de
diseases
algoritmos de
through
predicción
a
de
prediction
inteligencia artificial.
algorithm
Generamos
and
un reporte,
AI. We produce a
alertamos al
report.
productor
We
por
alert the
mensaje de
farmer
WhatsApp o correo
currently through
electrónico.
WhatsApp or
Ya
email.
también intentamos con
And
una
we
app,
also
pero el
tried
productor no
to have an
lo
app,
usa.
but producers
Y el
don't use
productor
it,
toma sus
and
decisiones.
producers make
¿Cómo
their
lo hacemos?
decisions.
Tenemos
And how
un
do we
producto
do all this?
mínimo
We have a
viable
minimum
actualmente.
viable
Trabajamos con
product.
este colector de
We
esporas
work with
manual
this
y lo que hacemos
sports
es cruzar la
collector,
información
and what we
obtenida de
do
estos
is we cross
colectores.
the information obtained by these
Observamos la densidad
producers. We
de
observe
esporas que se
the
encuentran en el aire.
density of
Esto
spores
lo
in
llevamos a
the
un
air.
laboratorio
We
donde
take this to a
analizamos las
laboratory
esporas,
where we
cruzamos con un
analyze these
algoritmo
spores, and we
desarrollado por nosotros.
cross it with an
Los
algorithm
datos
we
determinan,
develop
bueno,
with
el algoritmo
climate
se genera por la
data.
combinación de
Well, the
procesamiento de
algorithm is
los datos de
generated
forma
by us,
gráfica
and
y con estos
a
datos nosotros
climate
podemos
data
predecir
and
la
phenological age. And
aparición
with
de la
this, we can
enfermedad
predict the
entre 7 a
outbreak
15
of
días
disease
antes de que
between
ocurran
7
los
and
síntomas en
15
el
days
campo.
between the
Con esto damos
symptoms
tiempo
in
suficiente al
field. And this
agricultor
gives
para que
enough
pueda
time
actuar.
to the producer to act.
Bueno, entonces lo que les
And as I
comenté,
said,
instalamos los
we
equipos en el
install
campo
the equipment in the
y
field.
por el momento lo estamos
And
haciendo así,
currently, we're
semanalmente lo
doing
estamos
weekly
monitoreando. Hay un
monitoring.
operador
We
que
have
lleva las
an
esporas y las
operator
envía
that
a un
gets
laboratorio.
the samples and takes them
Nuestro
to
modelo
the
de negocios
laboratory.
es
our business model is directly with farmers. However, there are some companies who have approached us, for instance, Bayer. There's other companies that sell supplies on biological fungicides that are interested in a prediction model. And now we have contracts with some companies who are offering our services, and they include the price of our service in the cost of these supplies, of their supplies. And we generate or produce a report, and depending on each lot that is monitored, they receive a report that could be from void, low, medium, and high presence of risk of the disease appearing. The goal is to increase a yield with the less use of fungicides. And the goal is that by applying these fungicides in a timely fashion, we are decreasing the risk of resistance, and we're also making these fungicides have greater efficacy in the control, because it's not the same applying before the spores infect, and after that, the efficacy is lowered when the spore is in the plant and we apply the fungicide. We generate savings in fungicides in times when it's not very raining, and we have a case where a producer of 1,000 hectares saved $50,000. He was very happy, and this producer is calling us now for the third year in a row. We also have validation work, testing in the field that we repeat every year. And although it doesn't seem like we're generating 33% extra production, which is close to 100 kg per hectare produced, and we reduced in 20% the severity of the disease. For every 1% increase of severity of this fungus, it reduces 20 and 30 kg per hectare in yield. This is a case of a producer who applied 6 times in a crop. He would generally do that. So with our product, he reduced to half the applications, and he had savings of $18,000, and the productivity increase $12,000, and our service cost him $1,200. As far as traction and benefit, we so far have invoiced $35,000, 10,000 hectares monitored, and an economic benefit for producers of $320,000. What are we currently doing? We're developing a prototype which is capable of recognizing spores without the need of a human observer, and this is with AI. So it's a sort of box where the producer can have in their office. We initially made a prototype that was in the field, but it's very unstable, not accurate. And now we generated artificial intelligence that is capable, currently 60% accuracy. It recognizes of 100 spores, it recognizes 60. And we are alongside developing other prototypes going through microscopes that recognizes the images, and a technique called Fourier tychography, which is something novelist. And throughout this coming season, planting season, we'll be once again testing our AI. And for July 2025, we expect to have the spores collector, automated spores collector. We currently work, or where we already have this product, is in soy, but for 2 years we've been testing in rice, wheat, and maize, and we have predictions. And for next season in Paraguay, we will be offering the service, and we can make it functional in other crops. However, we do need to do some testing before that. We have several allies. We receive a fund from IDB Lab for $150,000, and we recently were finalists and winners in the startup boot camp in Holland. We also received there $25,000 and the opportunity to open up in the U.S. Sancor Seguros is currently working with us. They'll install our service in all their policyholders who buy their the insurance policy for rust and soy, and this represents close to 10,000 hectares. And we have the potential for scaling worldwide. This is the limitation is we have received calls for Colombia, from Argentina, Brazil. We also spoke with Quilmes, Argentina, for barley. But they have told us that they would like to work with the product once it's finalized. And what our competitors set us apart from those competitors is that we have a lower price, and different from them, we do monitor the pathogen. We're not only based in maps or historical data. Some companies use historical data for susceptibility or resistance of the plants, and besides that, they monitor the environment. Those are our advantages. We're a diverse team. We have high training from different parts of the world, and we also have worked with a number of agro companies and with national and private universities in Paraguay. So we're a prediction and disease monitoring service with a high scalability technology, AI plus hardware. We're a solution that saves money, increases production. We are seeking a round of pre-seed of $250,000, and the financing will give us consolidation in technological and the market. Smart Soul, we take care of your crops for you to feed the world. Thank you. Thank you very much, Guillermo. And now we go on to the Q&A session. Any question? Thank you very much for that presentation. And I would just like to better understand if you're only charging $6 per hectare, and how long does it take you to recover the investment in the equipment? Well, the equipment we're currently using is a very low cost. It's between $3 and $5. However, developing the automated equipment for now has a cost only for the first prototype of $40,000. However, what we expect is once we have developed this prototype, for its cost to be $300 for each device, each box. We call it a mini lab. Congratulations. And regarding my question is related to other diseases that could be part of your roadmap, where you can apply the same solution with other. We're currently, for some years, in pathogens that call stains in the leaves, not only soy, rice, and with some variations, we can work with any pathogen that is fungi, because bacteria are too small and they're out of what we can capture with this equipment. But we are working with several diseases.
Perhaps my question may seem a bit weird, but it's well known that crops and also pathogens, etc., can always adapt to certain applications that happen with resistance to pesticides. So I was wondering, with this constant monitoring, etc., how do you capture this process, or perhaps can the pathogen itself understand how monitoring works and escape it? Could something like that even happen? It's hard for it to escape from a monitoring system. I mean, there is resistance in plants and resistance to fungicides, to fungus killers, but there's never been reported a case like that. You never know how smart the plants are and pathogens, etc. Thank you very much, Guillermo.
Muy bien.
Very well.
Pues vamos a pasar de
Well then,
Paraguay a
we'll move from
Colombia.
Paraguay to Colombia.
Vamos a tener el placer de
We'll have the
que venga
pleasure
AgTechs,
for
nos
the
haga una
company
presentación, por favor,
AgTechs.
Paula.
In this presentation, please, Paula.
Buenas tardes, mucho gusto. Yo
Good
soy Paula
afternoon.
Ponte, la
It's
cofundadora
a
y
pleasure. I'm
CEO
Paula
de
Fonte,
CuruAtech.
the CEO and
Bueno,
founder
les quiero
of
empezar
CuruAtech.
presentando a Joana.
I wanted to
Joana
introduce
es una
Joanna.
agricultora
Joanna
colombiana de lechuga
is a
que
Colombian
desafortunadamente está
lettuce
viviendo
farmer.
con tan solo
Unfortunately, she's living
$57 al
off
mes,
of $57 a
porque no
month.
tiene acceso
Why?
al
Because
conocimiento
she
que
has
ella
no knowledge,
necesita
access
para
to the
poder
knowledge
llevar a
she
cabo
needs
su labor.
to carry forward her work.
En CuruAtech estamos sumamente apasionados por esta problemática,
In
dado
Curuatec, we are
que
quite
no es un
excited about
problema que
this
aborda
problem
solo
because
Joana,
this
sino
problem
el
does not impact
90% de
only
los
Johanna, but
agricultores,
rather
no solo en América Latina, sino en el mundo.
90% of
Y esto
farmers,
ha
not
hecho
just in
que
Latin
usen
America, but
6 veces
worldwide.
más químicos,
And this has
pierdan el
led to the
35% de
use
su
6 times
de su
more
producto
of
y por
chemicals,
ende el
losing
77%
a
de
lot
sus
of the
rentabilidades.
35% more of
Esto
their
está
production,
afectando
and that
otros
results in
actores en el ecosistema.
77% less
Los
profitability.
agronegocios
This
están
is
comprando hasta el
impacting other
90% de sus
stakeholders in the
productos en las
system.
centrales mayoristas del grano
Agribusiness is
y
buying from
nosotros los
closer
consumidores no estamos
wholesaler, and we, the
recibiendo la
consumers,
calidad de
are not
producto que
receiving the quality of
deseamos.
product that we wish to
Por
receive.
eso es que CuruAtech
That is
es una
why
startup de
Kurubatek
triple impacto,
is a triple
planetas,
impact
personas y rentabilidad.
startup, which focuses on
Hasta el
planet,
momento hemos
persons,
operado en
and
más o menos un
profitability.
tercio de Colombia,
We
por si
have
no lo han
covered
notado
at
por mi
least a
acento.
third of Colombia.
Tenemos
If you
9
haven't
clientes
noticed
y
by
aliados
my
estratégicos
accent, we
y
have
lo hemos
9
hecho a
strategic
través de 10
allies
tipos
and
de
clients, and we've done it
distintos.
through 10 different types
Como la
of
startup
crops.
anterior, también
Like the
pasamos
previous
por
startup,
Village Capital
we
y
also went through Village
por
Capital
Startup Bootcamp,
and
al
Startup
igual que Scale Up
Bootcamp,
Latam. Hace
just
un mes nos
as
ganamos
Scale
un
Up
premio
Latam.
Nestlé, por lo cual ahora
A
vamos a
month
ser
ago, we
parte de su
won an
cadena de
award from
valor
Nestle, so we'll
y
become
pues
part of
bueno,
their
eso nos abre
value
varias
chain,
posibilidades
and
muy
this
interesantes.
opens a number of interesting doors and possibilities for us.
Entonces, ¿qué es lo que hacemos?
So,
En
what do we
esencia, lo que
do?
hacemos es reducir la
What we
brecha de
do is we
conocimiento,
reduce the
haciendo
knowledge
que la
gap
asistencia
by
técnica
making
sea
sure that technical
asequible y
assistance
accesible para los
is
cultivadores,
accessible
mientras que hacemos que
and affordable,
trazabilidad
while
agroalimentaria sea posible
agri-food
para las
traceability
empresas
must be
como
possible
Nestlé.
for companies like Nestle.
¿Cómo funciona? Es muy sencillo.
How does this work?
CuruAtech
It's very
es un software.
simple.
Nosotros
Kuruatec
nos
is a
apalancamos
software,
en WhatsApp
and we
para que
leverage
los
WhatsApp
agricultores
to
nos
ensure that
manden sus
farmers
métricas de
send
productividad.
us their
Estas las
productivity
subimos a la
metrics.
base de
These
datos.
are
Los
uploaded to the
agronómicos
database.
trabajan en nuestra plataforma y
Agronomists
de
work on
vuelta
our
les brindan
platform,
asistencia
and
técnica
then they are
bajo
provided
demanda.
with technical
Esto va
assistance.
desde la estructuración
This
del
goes from
cultivo
structuring
hasta
the
que
crop
pues ya lo cosecha. Y
all
al
the way
final, como
to
les decía,
harvest.
convertimos toda esta
And at the end,
información
we
en
convert all of this
trazabilidad, que en
information
esencia les
into
permite a las
traceability,
empresas poder
which
cumplir con las
essentially
regulaciones
allows
para poder
companies to fulfill
exportar y vender.
regulations in order to export and
Lo más
sell.
impactante para
What's
nosotros
most
han sido las
impactful
cifras
for
que
us
hemos
has
logrado.
been the figures we have achieved.
Mejorar la
We've
productividad
achieved
en
an increase in
aproximadamente, pues,
productivity in
en
at
un
least,
promedio
or an
del
average,
43% y hemos
43%,
reducido
and we
tanto
have
los
reduced
químicos como los costos en
costs
un
and chemicals
38%,
in
esto a
38%.
través de
This has
35
led
cultivos
to
distintos.
35 different crops.
Muy bien. Entonces, nosotros
So,
estamos enfocados
we
primero en Colombia, pero
are
realmente,
focused
como
first
ya
in
hemos venido
Colombia,
hablando todos estos
but
días,
as we've
esto es un
discussed in
problema
previous
global.
days,
Se trata de
this is a global
608
problem.
millones de
It's
pequeños y medianos
about
agricultores que no tienen acceso a
millions of
asistencia
small
técnica,
to
es
mid-sized
decir, un
farmers that
mercado
don't
de
have technical
21.6
assistance.
billones de dólares,
This is a
los cuales
$20.6
nosotros
billion
vamos a empezar
market,
abordando
which we will
con
start
15.000
tackling with
agricultores a los cuales
15,000
tenemos
farmers
acceso directo
to
en
whom we have direct
18
access,
meses.
access in 18
¿Por qué
months.
van a usar CuruAtech? Porque
Why they
CuruAtech
will
es
use
distinto.
Kuruvatec?
Lo
Because
primero es que
Kuruvatec is
como
different.
usamos
First of
tecnología
all, is
con la que
because we
ya están
use
familiarizados,
technology that you're already
realmente
familiar
lo
with,
hacemos
we
fácil y
do
accesible
this
para los agricultores.
easy
Lo segundo es
and
que
affordable
el
for
modelo de
farmers.
asistencia
The other
técnica
thing is that a
híbrido nos
model for
permite
hybrid
darlo
technical
de
assistance
modo oportuno.
allows to
Y
provide
lo más
assistance
importante de
in
todo es
an
que
appropriate
convertimos
manner.
estos
And
datos
what's
en
most important of all
información
of this is that we
accionable,
convert
lo cual nos
this
permite
information
comprometernos
into
con el
actionable data, which
mejor
allows us to commit
de la productividad
to the
y
best
a
of
su vez
productivity
darle
and at the
crecimiento y
same time
estabilidad a
to
nuestros
give growth
agricultores
and
que tanto lo
sustainability to our
merecen pero
farmers
nunca lo
who
han tenido.
deserve it but have never had it.
Para
In summary, how do we focus on the different parts of the value chain? With farmers, we grant them access to knowledge and we allow them to increase their productivity by 43% in just one cycle. For our agricultural experts, we allow them to reach out 10 times more farmers simply by using our platform and not having to displace themselves. And the companies, we give them the opportunity to purchase 40 times more product than what they have been traditionally doing. Thanks to this, we have a B2B model where we offer this service to these companies so that their farmers may produce more, better, and with traceability. Our prices start at $12 per hectare per month, and they vary according to the type of crop, their objectives, and the technology that they want to include. Thanks to this, we'll be able to span 100,000 farmers, and in just 3 years. Now we're opening our pre-seed round for $500,000 to work with the first 15,000 farmers, developing the product and the business. Behind this is a team that I am very lucky to be able to work with. They have experience on the agricultural market in Colombia. They develop software, they work in innovation, and of course, in agribusiness. Aside from this, we have several consultants and advisors on product, legal, agriculture, and business. And they have experience at companies like KPMG, Bayer, and Visa. We know that sustainable agricultural that is profitable and sustainable is possible, which is why we're focusing on 7 of these SDGs. We're empowering farmers, and we invite you to join our effort, whether it's an investment, in alliances, in partnerships, so that together we may feed the world. You can scan our demo right there or visit our website, get to know us better. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Paula, por la presentación.
Thank you very much, Paula, for your presentation. We now move on to the Q&A session. Please don't be scared. In case you were unable to see it, there's a banner, pink, like my trousers, and you can scan it there. Good afternoon. Pleasure to meet you, Julian Trosh from Panama. First of all, I wanted to congratulate you for the presentation. It's very interesting. I only had a question, and it was regarding the topic of the 15,000 farmers. We work on an area on advisor and on the technical assistance of the farmers. What would you do to provide follow-up to so many farmers in an efficient manner to make sure that it was effective for you from the economic perspective? Thank you for the question. Let's see, through our hybrid model, we're part of the remote assistance and part is on-site assistance, we can have scalability. Another very important point is since we work through a B2B model and not directly with the farmers, we can understand under which conditions these products are purchased, meaning we know under which quality or quantity conditions we need to take them.
Por allí. Hola, ¿qué tal? Bueno, ya
Well,
hablé muchas veces, estoy perdiendo los
I already
créditos.
spoke several times, so I'm losing all credit to speak, but
¿Cuál es la metodología que
what's the
utilizaron para medir
methodology you
ese
use to measure the increase in production of 43%? Of course, what we did was, first of all, with the first farmers, we assessed what was their current level of production on their own land, and then how much they produced thanks to the technical assistance. In the same manner, as several cycles go by, we keep that data in mind and it impacts the figures.
Muy bien. ¿Alguna
Very
pregunta
well.
más?
Any further questions?
Hola, mucho gusto, muchas gracias.
Hello,
Soy
pleasure to
Teresita
meet you.
Almanza,
Thank you very much. I'm from Latin, and my question is, can you double-click or describe more how the traceability part of the platform work? What type of information you upload, and what type of certification or information you can obtain through this? Yes, of course. I don't know if we can go back to the presentation, whether that's too hard. Well, anyway, while it loads, depends on the type of crop. Then the type of information we upload to the platform varies. And it also depends on the type of certification that you want to reach. But it's basically divided into productivity, the management of pests and diseases, and actions as such. And we store all of this in our database, and depending on what it will be used for in the upcoming stage, as I mentioned, an entrepreneur effort to say, Joanna produced this in such and such a part of Colombia, and the trade of lettuce is benefiting her community, or this is non-GMO, it did not pass, doesn't have these chemicals, or simply to be able to tell Nestle, look, the cocoa you invested in is at this stage of growth, and obviously it depends on what type of information we display. So I'm sorry, I'll have to go through all of this again. I swear it's halfway through. This one. Yes. So this really is what our WhatsApp conversation looks like with the farmer. And this is what our agronomist sees. And this is the history, what's happened and what's going on. And then there are parts where you can look at what recommendations he provided. This is what we look at depending on whether it's certification, history, or just a progress report.
Muy bien.
Very well.
Pues nada, Paula, muchas gracias por tu
Well,
presentación.
Paula, essentially, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you very much. Well, we're going to move on to the last AgTech. First of all, we'll have to apologize for Agri 360 because they missed a flight. They were one of the 16 winners, but they missed their flight and they haven't been able to be here to join us. So first of all, we have to, apologize on their behalf. And the last one is Satellite on Fire, which is Franco Rodriguez from Argentina.
Bueno, hola a todos.
Very well. Hello, everyone. I hope that a few of you are still awake. I promise to give my presentation in just 6 minutes and not 10. That's the way I can capture your attention better. Perfect. I have 5 minutes left then.
Perfecto. Bueno, hola a todos.
Hello, everyone. I am Franco. I'm the CEO of Satellites on Fire. We started in 2020 after observing the houses of family members to go on fire. We worked with hundreds of people who worked with forest fires to know the topic better. And we realized that the key to reduce the losses generated by fires is to tackle them on time, and that interventions were taking too long. $17,000 are lost for each hectare of forest that is burned, and it can take up to 20 years in recovering productivity. So we created Satellites on Fire, a platform for the protection before forest fires, and we provide consultancy on how to manage forest fires, risk assessment reports in areas over the past 10 years, and also lightning, which is the main cause of forest fires. We're in charge of detection by using satellites that provide us information every 10 minutes, together with other AI models. We provide cameras that take pictures every 3 minutes, and we complement this with a WhatsApp alert and by email to tackle forest fires in their inception. And we also do monitoring of fires with meteorological information, looking at wind maps, temperature maps, and moisture maps. We also look at the best of the system, thanks to Julio Simon, who's a forestry consultant, and says that the most important thing is early alert, having information every 10 minutes. Whereas with NASA's system, which is the most used in Latin America currently, forest fires can take several days or hours in appearing, or together with the hand of Alejandra Rodriguez from the state of Mexico. She told us that thanks to more information, thanks to our system, she was able to reduce to zero the death rate from firefighters, from forest fires that occurred where they didn't know where they were headed. What do we do differently? There are companies in Europe, for example, that have satellites to detect fires, and others that install software with the same purpose. We combine both technologies, but in addition, in our software-based strategy allows us to be very scalable, to have lower costs, and to be 100% focused on our artificial intelligence models. In a growing industry like the satellite industry, we can gather new data and images that are fed in to nourish our models. And these models allow us to grow. Currently, we have more than 25,000 users in 15 countries of Latin America. We obtained $700,000 of financing. We signed agreements with the National Council for Volunteer Firefighters in Argentina. We implemented the system throughout the country. And currently, in Satellite of Some Fire, we're helping to protect 100 fires each month. Currently, there are 284 million hectares of forests planted worldwide, investing $30 per hectare per year in forest protection, which is a market of $8.5 billion per year, without counting national parks, native forests, which together are another 4 billion hectares. This without counting also agricultural fields that are impacted by forest fires. And essentially, what we do is we give a B2B and B2G freemium service, software as a service, where we charge for monthly and yearly subscription to our warning system, where projects from the government receive notification from WhatsApp concerning the latest fires that have occurred, so to be able to tackle them on time and reduce losses. And today we are a team of 13 people who worked on projects with NASA, with the European Space Agency, people who were superintendents of national parks and managed the firefighting teams, people who were pre-selected as among the best coordinators worldwide. We also have investors from Latin America, but also from the US and Europe, who support us in all areas of our business, such as Techstar, MIT, Cygnus, Mercy Corps Prevention, and UN as well. We are committed to be the leading technology company in protecting our forests. And at this event, we're seeking to establish contact with forest companies, potential investors, of social responsibility areas, government, and forest carbon projects. And our objectives are to be able to provide the best satellite detection for forest fires on the market, reach 0.5 or $1 million of annual revenue for next year's, and to go to our seed round. Thank you very much. Thank you, Franco. It's been 6 minutes, huh? I must say that finally, the last AgTech will connect via video conference. So now we move on to the Q&A session. Anybody has any questions? Over there. Hello, good afternoon. Great project, fascinating project. We were discussing it during lunch. And the question is right to the point. How do you cooperate with forestry carbon projects? How do you envision it? Perfect. Thank you for the question. Basically, we support them to protect their territory from forest fires. The first thing we do is we analyze the area to look at what parts of the territory have the greatest risk of fire. And then we propose a strategy, whether it's satellite detection, camera detection. And right now we're looking at drone detection to have detection as quickly as possible, so as to prevent native forests from burning down and to lose the possibility to sell carbon credits in that area. Then also by proving that we have innovative technologies for forest protection, you can truly increase your bonds and also reduce the buffer of insurance associated with the mitigation for environmental risks. Any further questions?
Yo iba a hacer también una. Yo tengo una pregunta.
I have a question. I've seen that in the comparison you showed us, you use satellite images, but you also use your own cameras. You set them up, or do you use existing cameras? That's kind of the line of the question. Perfect. Yes, these are essentially cameras on detection towers at 40, 70 meters height, where we implement the camera, which can be optical or thermal. It rotates automatically. And we detect fires using artificial intelligence, and this is issued as an alert via WhatsApp. Since we do not cover hardware and we're not interested, we have allies in Latin America that do these installations for us, and we simply implement that software. And it also allows us to connect to cameras that already exist on the territory, but they have a person rotating 8 cameras manually.
Gracias.
Thank you. This question is not as strange as the previous one. So you help counteract forest fires and to be closer to the focus on time. But is there also a possibility of using the data generated in order to change, for example, the structure of crops so that they are less susceptible, and also to improve how to counteract? Have you thought about this byproduct, a byproduct that perhaps right now is focused on counteracting, but moving towards prevention? Excellent question. And it's part of leveraging part of the team. And you can leverage the knowledge on detection and tools of prevention and risk assessments and lightning, and how we can move more towards prevention. How large the really forest breaks should be, and how it can be prepared for prevention. We discussed with U.S. companies on how to become more resilient against forest fires, and that's in the pipeline. Any other questions? Javito? Since we have time, now it's 4 minutes. No, look, you said that you have information every 10 minutes. I understand that's with the cameras around the area, right? That's 10 minutes with satellites. Every 10 minutes? Can you tell me what kind of satellite program is? Yes, it doesn't mean that by having images every 10 minutes, we can detect any fire of any size, any place within 10 minutes. It means that we receive information every 10 minutes. And these are geostationary, so it means that they monitor always the same place on Earth. In this case, it's all of the America. And by looking at it, they can take these pictures and provide us with this information constantly. So we process this, we issue the alerts. The problem of these satellites is often that they don't have the best resolution possible. And so what we do is we open our AI and we teach it on how to improve that resolution based on lower height satellites, so as to detect it more precisely and more and faster. That's what I was going to say, because I was talking about stationary satellites. They often don't have great imagery to really have early detection. Yes, we rescale, we use AI, we mix it with meteorological data. It's not the only source of information. We don't just look at the image to issue an alert. And now, a follow-up question. Obviously, there are territories with a lot of clouds. How do you solve that issue? Well, the idea is to be able to combine as many technologies as possible, because obviously there are territories like radar satellites that allow you to see through the clouds. So the idea is to be able to complement this with as many technologies as possible. If a forestry company, for example, wants ultra early alert, satellites won't be the answer. It can be cameras. So that's the complementarity that we're seeking. If you have a camera, you won't have those issues. But for example, you may have fog on the territory and the camera wouldn't give you the best solution. In this case, it will be satellites. So it's not one or the other. Each one has advantages, pros and cons, and we complement them with each other to obtain the best information possible. Thank you very much, Franco. Thank you.
Hay otra pregunta.
Another question. One last question, Franco. Excellent presentation. In terms of the alert, you said that you also use WhatsApp. What do you obtain as alert? A location, an address, a level of risk? What is the kind of information that I would receive via WhatsApp? Yes, exactly. Currently, you'd receive coordinates, what method the fire was detected with, and we provide 2 links. One, so that the fire can be tackled as soon as possible, and the other one to look at climate data like a wind map and temperature map to kind of have more information when you're tackling it.
¿Alguna pregunta más? Ahora sí.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Que bueno, cosas del directo,
Very
finalmente
well.
no se van a poder conectar por
It
videoconferencia.
turns out that you won't be able to join us via video conference. So we have finished this part of our session. Thank you very much.
Es lo que hay. Mi mujer me dice muchas veces, mi mujer debe ya, dice, es que es cuadriculado. Digo, no, es que o por aquí, no es cuadriculado, coño.
Matemática. Bueno,
All right then. Okay, let's go all together.
The conference is now in session. Please be seated. La conferencia ha comenzado. Por favor, ocupe su asiento.
gracias. Bueno,
Very well then.
última sesión del
The
día.
last session of today, where it's been a marathon of a day, but it leaves us with a lot of content and links and conversation. So we ask you to make your final effort. And we have a very interesting topic that deserves all the attention and exchange because we'll speak about money. And that's why we left it for last. So we're going to speak about money together with institutions dedicated to financing public, private origin, and public-private also, that very well articulate public and private. And what we wanted to discuss is something I was mentioned a couple of times, possibly in a shy way in the discussions, but I'm sure it'll gain importance, which is the best model, financing model, if it exists or if it's several, to leverage sustainable development of digital solutions. In this case, digital, but also other technological solutions. And from our different guests that I'll introduce briefly, we want to get their vision and what they see regarding financing for AgTech development, digital technologies, and also for them to share briefly. They have a certain time to do this, what model they are implementing, from where the financing comes and that they then offer AgTechs, how they articulate, because we want to learn from different experiences that might be replicable in other countries. So that's pretty much the objective for today. On one hand, we have Teresita y Marco from eLab. I'll introduce quickly, and then we have Ricardo Padron. He's from Activa Katie. We have Carla. I don't know if she's connected or not. Carla Bercu, Bio Enterprise Canada. And we have Michael Masilla in Venture. Scott Day, who is connected. Hi, Scott. Falling Capital, Eduardo Chomali, whom we discussed on Monday, CAF, Caribbean, and CTV Ventures Brazil, Daniel Block also, MEC Corp, and Enrique Hennings from FIDA, or IFAD, acronym in English. So each one of them are committed with the organization to give a very concrete and specific presentation to respond to these questions we just made, and we'll give a sequence of introductions, and then the idea is to have a discussion. And to begin, I'll give the floor to Ricardo Padron, Activa Katia, for him to share regarding Activa Katia and what you do in Costa Rica. In the meantime, we'll project your presentation, Ricardo. Perfect. And thank you very much for this opportunity. And first of all, I want to congratulate you. It's been a very good day, and to see these entrepreneurs and the energy is being generated. It's very good and has great value. I'll share very quickly how Activa Katia started, and to give a bit of context, it comes from Katia. Katia is a tropical agronomic center for research and education. It's turning 50 years, and it was the first postgraduate school in agriculture, and it still remains. The mission of Katia has always been to support, it's a regional institution, to support the member countries in all the research in agriculture. So it's a research institute. It generates 3 action lines. The first one, very important, education to train professional postgraduate students and PhDs also, and master's degrees. And then it has the research units that feed that postgraduate school. And then we have the outreach. And this is where all these development projects come from. And throughout these 50 years, it has evolved on how to do development. And recently, Activa started the Laboratory on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. You see that the entrepreneurs have that agility to generate innovation. So the idea is to support them for that innovation to go to rural areas and start generating that development. So this institution with great tradition starts farming to create this laboratory. And how does the laboratory work? And it's not only an incubator, because since it's in part of a research institute, we determine if these innovations are actually generating a positive impact. There's a lot of research behind how the climate variability is, and if it's actually mitigating or working for different crops. So there's a lot of research, but it's brought down to entrepreneurs, and there's methodologies to see how the laboratory is focused in very early stages, the earliest stages in the first years with prototype categories, and then what the main focus is. And we also hold very important events of how the center connects with networking spaces like this one. This is the working team. Vladimir, who's the director. I'm there. Also Juan, who is here, and the rest of the team in the field. Very quickly, this is the detail we want to share with you, the experience with development banking. Here in Costa Rica, interesting experience is that there is a national development banking. And this means that through private banking, this bank was developed, and this bank provides resources for different action lines. And one of these is developing the entrepreneur ecosystem with seed capital. Since these are state funds, they have to be aligned with environmental policies or social policies, which are in Costa Rica, or in any case, that's how it was linked with CATIE. And we are linked to the decarbonization plan of Costa Rica. Very interesting is a document that presents different lines of action and also to the bioeconomy strategy and other plans. This means that all the entrepreneurships, we find a way for it to be aligned with these policies. And in the selection process, there's criteria for that. And the most interesting thing has been to bring this policy available for the entrepreneurs to start reading these policies to see how their startups are aligned or not. And this justifies access to these public funds. These funds are, as I said, are public funds of the Costa Rican state, and they're under the law of public funds. It's very interesting how to transfer these to entrepreneurs. These are the two documents that you can access through internet, the National Decarbonization Plan and Bioeconomy, and there's other documents, but this is a very good practice, worthwhile replicating, trying to see what instruments the countries have and how programs can be aligned with the policies to start mobilizing public funds. And this is interesting here. It's a graph that is presented by development banking and how they plan that mobilization of resources. We're in seed capital, but they also give banks venture capital with preferential rates. And so far, we have mobilized over $2 million, which have been transferred to entrepreneurs, 46% women, and approximately, or actually over 100 startups. And this is pretty much the evolution of how it was managed. It started with a pilot in 2020 with few entrepreneurs, and then it increased and mobilize more resources. And that's the expectation. When we're asked how we see the future, is to guarantee that this has the impact results for the funds that are public to continue growing for entrepreneurs, especially in early stages when they're required the most, greater mass of proposals and iteration. These are different sectors. Here, there's an important reflection. When the project came about, it was mainly to strengthen the forestry sector, but we learned that in the productive realm, it's important to include other items. So now it includes AgTechs that can find resources here to start doing their pilots and working prototypes. And the idea is for them to connect with other financing sources. So if focus on only one item could be complicated, and in the diversification, there's greater possibility to mobilize resources and to be aligned with the objectives of the governments to support the entrepreneur ecosystem. Here you can see some of our profiles. We say it a lot as entrepreneurs. They can start structuring and have access to other financing funds. We have noticed greater candidates, over 1,000 the last time I checked, and this shows there's a great ecosystem and demand for many ideas that are being presented. So resources are starting to diversify in different amounts depending on the stages and the different items. Here to close off, this is, ran out of time? Okay, very well. So as a conclusion, because there was a question of how we see the future. Well, we see several futures. It's hard to predict only one future. It's best to envision several scenarios. I think it's important to engage public funds, and this is an example of early stages, and also for it to be very much linked to education. We've seen that education has a positive relation with investments, and there must be investments at different levels in the rural to generate these innovations. So in CATIE's experience and linked to the government and international experience, we see two important fronts in these two aspects. Thank you very much, Ricardo. Very clear, and thank you for that detail. We'll continue now to those who are connected virtually. And now I want to give the floor to Scott Day from Fall Line Capital. Scott will speak in English, so whoever needs interpretation can go and take your device, get your device. I don't see Scott, but I'm pretty sure he's listening. So Scott, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm actually joining you from my farm in Manitoba, Canada. I just got off the combine and joining you for a few hours where I farm with my family. We grow canola, wheat, barley, peas, soybeans, soybeans, and so on, and the center of North America and center of Canada. I also work full-time as a director and the chief agronomist for Fall Line Capital, and we're an investment firm based in the United States that buys and manages farmland and also invests in AgTech. I'm not sure how the PowerPoint. Are we going to pull up my PowerPoint slide?
Vamos a la presentación de Scott.
See if we can show.
We're trying to get your presentation.
So yeah, sorry. And I'll let you go and. So we started about 12 years ago, and we're based in San Mateo, but our farmland acquisitions are across the United States, in the Delta, southern part of the Mississippi Delta, in Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, the Pacific Northwest, a little bit in California, Central Valley. We had farms in other regions, and we've sold them because the investments timed out. On the AgTech portfolio, we have approximately 30 companies based in 30 companies based in 5 different countries, and they feature a wide range of ag and food tech. We are early stage investors in technology, generally seed, Series A. Our initial investments are usually in that 2 to 5 million US, but we're flexible. We have been looking at some later stage investments, and we have been investing outside of that check size as well. We like to lead or co-lead around, and we like to invest at a level that it gives us at least a board seat. If we're going to make a commitment to a company, it will be significant, and we will maintain capacity in our fund to be able to fulfill any pro rata or follow-up investments that we deem needed with the company. So we make a long-term commitment if we make a decision with a company. You can go to the next slide here. This is kind of a quick snapshot of at least, I think, most of our AgTech and food investments. They're basically in 4 categories: biotech, software, hardware, food and nutrition. We do have an investment and another one pending in permanent carbon storage. So that's a little bit out of those categories. But on the biotech, we're investing in platforms that are creating RNA pesticides and peptide-based pesticides that are very exciting. Software, we were an investor in Granular, and that saw a nice exit to Corteva. And we're an investor in Verge, which is a company that does farm pathway optimization. And that was an investment done in coordination with an investor out of Brazil, and they're part of this digital week as well. So you'll be hearing from Verge at some point, I'm sure. Hardware, we have some new investments in AI augmented autonomy and AI augmented irrigation management, but also with very precise robotic weeding systems and that sort of thing, and some drone sprayers that are built from the ground up to be specifically farm sprayers that we're quite excited about. And then food and nutrition, we are investors in like Impossible and Ripple that make alternative protein products, but we had a bit of a connection to those companies because our farmers were involved in supplying them with the protein at one point. And we're looking at platforms that are kind of disruptive to food technology in general, not just the plant-based side of things. Next slide. So we do have some synergies between our farmland and our AgTech. We leverage all that experience we have as farmers and working with farmers, and we sometimes will test products on our farms. And sometimes our farms will be directly connected to our tech. For instance, with Ripple Foods, our farms in Montana grew the peas that Ripple made into milk. But I would say that we don't do a lot of this unless it's a win-win situation, because the AgTech fund is separate with different investors than the farmland fund. So we can't really compromise one for the sake of the other. It has to be a definite win-win opportunity. Regardless of that, we definitely use our experience and connection in the ag industry to help us make better decisions and do better diligence on new technology because of that experience and network. The current ag tech investment climate is, we're in a downturn in the investment cycle. We've seen significant declines in the amount of money deployed from 2022 was a pretty significant year, dramatic drop in 2023. So far in 24, it's even further dropping. I saw a report that in Q2, there was about a third of all the funding rounds were down rounds or flat. That third of all the rounds being in that category is the highest that the industry has seen in at least 10 years. However, we also know that there are still funding rounds being fulfilled, and there is still money to invest. We have a fund that still has money to deploy. But as we get to this stage, it's especially crucial to have your technology proven under a wide range of scenarios. And if you have any commercial success, albeit even if it's small, that's extremely important now, more important than it was 2 or 3 years ago. And specific to the region we're talking about, or the people that are gathered today, we often talk to ag startups from Central and South America. We have an investment in Agrify based in Argentina, and like I mentioned, one that's going to be part of your event here. Next slide. So this is just an example of a bunch of the tech being deployed on our farms. That dedicated spray drone, that's really amazing, actually. The upper right is an RNA-based insecticide that kills Colorado potato beetles that was tried on our farm. Lower left is a carbon capture system through enhanced rock weathering with basalt. That's our farm in Wisconsin. And then on the right is just me in a field of canola, but we are the only canola grower in 3 states in the US, as we're looking at introducing that crop and technology associated with that crop to be a winter crop that is used instead of a cover crop or fallow. So that pretty well covers it. I think I only had 6 minutes, so I hope I didn't go over too much, but that's Fall Line Capital.
Thank you very much, Scott. So, perdón. Entonces, vamos al próximo. Si tenemos la presentación
and if we could show Tere's presentation, Teresita.
Bueno, muchas
Sí,
gracias.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead, Tere. We're showing your presentation. First off, thank you, Federico, and thank you, the AICA team, for this wonderful Digital Agriculture Week. It's the 3rd edition, and to see you grow is fantastic, because it's one of these events that contributes with great value to the ecosystem. And being in this panel with some very loved colleagues and looking at different financing models in our sector is very important. We know not all startups or innovations that are being developed for the sector are visible by venture capitalists, and there are other ways of financing, and bringing these to the table today is very important. We're Latam, we're a venture capital firm. We invest mainly in high impact companies in the agri-food tech area, and our value proposition covers from the global to the regional footprint, and also all the local impact. And I'll share a bit of how we do this. Currently, we have track record of 3 funds. The first one was a $2.7 million fund from 2017, which is closed and invested. And then we went off to a $3.3 million fund. That was 2020. It's also closed and invested. And currently, we're finishing the fundraising for a 3rd fund for $50 million, in which we plan to invest close to 30 companies in the coming 5 years. our global visibility. We developed through our YID Lab funds that work in Asia Pacific, Europe, North America, Latin America, and very soon in Africa. We'll be opening the YID Lab Africa, and with them we share all the market trends, pipeline, information, global information on agri-food tech, but each fund operates individually with their investors and with their own portfolio for investments. We're currently a team of 12 of us in 4 different offices in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Mexico, US. We're a multidisciplinary team, diverse team. We're a team that tries to interact from the different locations and thus understand the needs of each part of the Latin American region. And for this, we have developed an ecosystem capillarity that through partnerships and alliances with various key institutions in the ecosystem in each country, we try to lower, develop, and have local presence, but always together with these strategic partners. That's why in Argentina we have a producers association like Nesters or Proceed. In Brazil, AgTech Garage, one of the most important ones, a garage. In Chile, SER, which is an agro research center, very important. And in each one of the countries, try to get a strategic partner who will help us with bringing this locally. And this is for you to consider how our investor pipeline is currently made up. Currently, we're looking for strategic partners, investors that come from the agro industry realm to somehow generate value, not only in our portfolio, but in the agri-food tech ecosystem. In the bottom part, you see all the investors that are part of machinery, ag input. Then we have the farmers, investors. These are investors, farmers who have invested in us. And then we have the CPG or consumer packaged goods like Nestle, Bimbo, Ilula, and Gloria, and the impact funds that are investors for the fund. And the top graph shows from what sectors the investment comes from, mainly in food, and we have other sectors, as you can see. And in the lower graph shows you a bit of how the breakdown, not the amount of investors, but the amount of money received. Most of the money today comes from the Mexico market, from our fund from Mexico. Our portfolio of companies currently has 26 companies in 7 countries. 7 countries are Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, Peru, Colombia, Mexico. We are about to invest, as I said previously, in 30 other companies. And the vision is always to diversify investment throughout the Latin American region and the Caribbean. Basically, what I'd like to share and add value. I know this morning you were discussing regarding ecosystems, regarding of how the ecosystem development is in Latin America. Our value proposal is somehow to develop ecosystems through a strong strategy, which I'll be sharing. Specifically, if we're mapping how the investment comes, and we know in latter years it's been very difficult for the sector. It's been hard to collect investments, but we have to be optimistic and think that investments in Latin America and the Caribbean are advancing in latter years despite the downturn, and there'll be a soon recovery. And together with this, the startup markets continue growing. This is what we're mapping. So far, we have a pipeline of 2,650 pipeline startups mapped, and with this, we try to interact, try to understand what stages they're in, understand their growth process, and this is how the pipeline is broken down. We have mapped, if you can see, 65% of our pipeline is in the southern cone. This is Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Bolivia. 20% of the startup market we have mapped is in the Andean region, Chile, Peru, and Colombia for us, and only 7% of the market, startup market in Mexico, and 3% in Central America. And this is very important to make visible because Mexico, as well as Central America, have very big potential. Therefore, all the work being developed with AICA and all the funds that are present from different parts of Central America, were really to share and to stimulate this ecosystem. And here you can see the measurements we perform to understand what stage the startups are. We measure 4 verticals. We see how the finance is, how the infrastructure is. We explore how their public policy and human capital. And we use a specific scorecard, but this is our current map, which corresponds and makes sense with this, where the greatest startup markets are. In other words, the most developed markets for AgTech is in the southern cone. Then in yellow, you see more incipient markets, and the green are the earliest ones we see in Latin America. And if we see this in more detail, you see that this corresponds with the investment tickets for the region from Brazil to Central American country like Guatemala and Honduras. You'll see that the investment tickets and the possibilities to find startups in different stages varies. This is to close off. We have decided to be able to cover the ecosystem. We have decided to link. There's a lot of information in the slide, but what I'm trying to show here is the center of the ecosystem with all the stakeholders. And starting from that to the left and the right, you'll see the programs we're developing from Yield Lab with the support of the Institute, which is the NGO or the nonprofit part, to support stakeholders in the different actions for ecosystemic development, which is our commitment today with LATAM and globally to potentiate agri-food tech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tere. Crystal clear. Very well. I'd like to now give the floor to Alejandro Chimali from CAF from Uruguay. He's connected online. Eduardo, take it away. Thank you very much, Federico. Warm greeting to everyone. I will be sharing a vision, perhaps a little different than what has been proposed. In CAF, we are a multilateral development bank, and I am part of the management of digital transformation for CAF, a management that has a vocation that generally supports investments in infrastructure and the public sector. However, this digital transformation gives across the board responsibility in the public and private sector in the system. To give you a little reference of the millions of dollars moved by CAF in its portfolio, most of them are assigned to the public sector. This is also related to the scale of the projects because many of them involve roadways, energy, etc. So they're very large amounts. And in the private sector, we have a role wherein CAF also acts as the banks of banks. This also involves the asset investments. So we can kind of say it's an atypical investment. And Federico, I have to kind of set this idea on the table so that maybe it can be covered in the next edition of this forum next year. We maybe show up with some kind of paper that we can develop together, those of us here, to publish what each one is doing and identify some type of document that can help guide many of you in terms of financing. And I'll talk about digital transformation globally. In CAF, our agenda, we have identified with great concern that while Latin America is making progress in deploying digital infrastructure in the productive sector, we are falling back on this part that is related to digital economy, meaning a productive use of the internet. And along these same lines, we understand that aside from the asymmetries that exist between the urban and rural sector, we have an important deficit in basic digital skills, and we have limitations in which SMEs make a productive use of this. And when you find it, is that Latin America has to invest approximately $200 billion in different segments of the digital economy to do the transition to the productive use. But we move on to the financing sources. And here we look at it across the board at digital transformation, not just AgTech, but there are some things that may apply. What we're seeing in general with these types of ecosystems is that traditional models are no longer sufficient. We could envision that a bank might finance a specific project for private investment, issue some type of resources, do an asset investment, specifically seek an alliance with several different sectors and finance the initiative. And the same applies from the public sector, initiatives where you could create funds in order to apply subsidies to specific sectors or use resources from specific sectors like doing communications to finance a given number of projects. But what we see beyond general roles, for example, in the public sector, what we see oftentimes is that financing is depleted in scales at the initial levels. It's fostered a lot. Entrepreneurship is fostered a lot, startups. But once you start evolving in the cycle of maturity of the project, that financing disappears. So along these lines, from CAF, we want to, the Latin American Development Bank wants to promote how we can seek models that leverage projects, because what we've seen is that we've seen it in the productive sector, even in the agricultural sector, what we've seen is that you can look at a perfect distribution of projects, understanding all of the value chains, how the technology works. But once you start looking at it in detail, there are problems of scale. And this, for multilateral banks, it's difficult to finance because the amounts are not sufficient, or because there's a lot of dispersion among stakeholders, because the public sector does not have a full commitment of taking on a financing to escalate the project. And so this leads us to envision new models. So linked to the traditional infrastructure system, we may envision to seek alliances with the government and how to act as guarantors and establish alliances with AgTechs to deploy specific projects in different segments that can be useful for the ecosystem. Another line that can be interesting, linked to the deployment or for the purchase of bonds, which can be some type of fiscal exceptions or exemptions so that the ecosystem may invest more deeply. Also, another interesting role may be how to add structures in which the communities or groups of farmers themselves may be capable of adding their own effort to ensure that vendors may deploy solutions on specific items. This requires coordination, which oftentimes is lacking, and I think that the state in multilateral banking can play a very important role. Another important dimension is related with the topic of implementing the deployment of services linked to the deployment of infrastructures. We know that oftentimes, when you start looking at telecommunication services, then you can package a number of investments where oftentimes the digital realm entails a larger cost compared to traditional systems and can be leveraged by the communities of the productive sector. And I think that there, AgTechs have a lot to provide in these types of alliances. And finally, I wanted to mention also the topic of the payment per results system, where you can define certain goals or targets or metrics for specific projects, wherein the state, whether it's leveraging public funds or multilateral banking, may disperse the resources once certain targets have been achieved. So these are messages that I've understood from an infrastructural perspective, but we need to re-envision the models and turn them around to have a greater level of impact and be more granular at the different scales, levels, and volumes of demand for financing to implement solutions. That's it for now, and I'm at your service to comment on any specific topic you need. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Eduardo.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, for bringing forth certain thoughts that maybe are outside the box and help us to foster a good discussion concerning alternatives compared to what we have currently. I want to currently grant the floor to Carla Mercúo. She's from Bio Enterprises in Canada. She's online, I believe. Carla also will be speaking in English. So once again, whoever needs simultaneous interpretation, use your headset or switch your channel online. Carla, thank you very much for being with us, and go ahead.
And thank you for the opportunity. Nice to meet you, everyone at the panel watching us online. I am here representing BioEnterprise. We are a not-for-profit in Canada, and we are a business accelerator. And I will share a few slides just to give you an overview of what BioEnterprise does and how we are funded and how we work with SMEs and government funding and private sector. Is it okay for me to share the screen? Do I need any permissions?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Can you see? Yeah, okay. I'll put in mode. There you go. You can all see it, right?
Yes.
So BioEnterprise is what we call Canada's food and agri-tech engine. We've been in business for about 20 years, and about 40 years ago, we created the engine, which is a alliance, if I may, of partners across Canada. And the partners include corporations, other accelerators, government, university colleges, everyone that's in the ecosystem supporting agri-tech innovation. And the way we work is, in Canada, there is a system that's called TRL, Technology Readiness Level, if you're not familiar with that, which means if a company is at TRL 1, they just had an idea. If they are at TRL 6, they already have a prototype. So in the funnel, BioEnterprise usually comes in when they are at a TRL 7. They are ready for commercialization and adoption. And we bring those SMEs or ventures closer to commercialization, as we can. The way we do it is through mentorship. We have experts in agri-tech that work with them and help them accelerate their business. And we are quite unique in Canada because we have worked for 20 years as an accelerator in agri-tech only. So we have all the expertise. And we have a great relationship with federal government and provincial government, economic development agencies, and so on. And that's how we have put together a way where they fund us, and our funding could be passed on to startups. And with our mentorship, we help that acceleration. The latest program we have running right now is funded by the federal government through the province of Ontario. And it's called the Grow Ontario Accelerator Hub. We were given about $2.5 million, and we have to work with about 100 companies in 5 years. And with that money, we are not giving money to the companies, we are using the money to develop them and to get them closer to commercialization. What do I mean by that? We not only give them coaching services and mentorship, but if they're part of our hub, they will have access to paid services. If they need to talk to a lawyer about IP strategy, if they need to talk about regulatory because they need some regulatory to launch their fertilizer or biofertilizer, anything that would be a barrier for the startup to cross, we are given that funding, and with that funding, we help them. This is a very unique program. It's the first time we're running it. And it is an initiative to see how else can the government help startups. And the main reason is, as many of you have said, and it happens everywhere globally, startups don't have money. And when they get funding, they think that any money is going to help them. But there is much more to that. It's not only the funding. It's not the magic that's going to make them successful, that's going to help them commercialize, or even if we have adoption, is yet another issue, or, never mind going to, export and things like that. So this is quite unique. Sorry?
I'm sorry for interrupt you, but can you wait 30 seconds because we have some problem here with the TV.
Okay,
and we
no
are
problem.
seeing presentation.
Okay.
Just 1 second. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
It's normal.
Okay, it is working again. So Carla, if you
Okay.
continue, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So that is quite unique. So now I'm going to go to the funding programs. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we have different funders. We have Farm Credit of Canada, which is a Crown corporation, the largest agricultural bank in Canada, lends money to farmers, but also supports the ecosystem with lots of funding. And then we have regional federal development organizations like FEDEV Ontario, and we have also a MAFRA, that's the Ministry of Agriculture in Ontario, so it's a provincial funding. So here is just a summary of some of the investment they have made, and this is the latest one. So if you look at this column here, Smart Growth, we had that program running for 40 years. It's 5 years. It started in 2019 until 2024. We were able to support 29 companies with funding. What does that mean? They applied, they have a project, we finance that project, work with them for a year, 2 years, year and a half, 6 months, depending on the project, and we include mentorship and other acceleration services with it. But it's basically government money that comes to us, and we manage that money, and then we pass it on to the companies that are supported through that funding. It was a very successful program. We were able to deploy $2.4 million to 29 companies. And usually all this funding is non-dilutive. There is no payback. The company gets 100% of the money, and we don't take equity. We don't do anything. We simply work with them and help them accelerate the business with that money. Then when that program was about to end, the same agency spoke to us, and they wanted to do a very specific clean tech program where they would help specifically food processors. And that money was to match make. So we would find a clean tech company that could bring a solution to producers in Ontario, and that project to be paid with that money. So we had, people having waste management, any operation that could become a little more sustainable with that money. That's what the project money was used for. And we were able to work with 47 companies. This was a 1-year project, and we spent $2.45 million with those projects. And then there are these other ones. I think an interesting one as well would be the fertilizer challenge, which basically they gave us money for $1.6 million. You have 1 year to bring companies in, and we need fertilizers to be developed in Ontario by Ontario companies, so we don't have to depend on exports or imports to be able to bring fertilizers. In this case, it was an emergency because the Ukraine-Russia war. Believe it or not, Canada gets most of their fertilizers from them. So we had to have our homegrown development, and the government injected quite a bit of money into 9 companies where they could accelerate their development, and they are homegrown companies now that keep working with the government, and some of them got an extra investment of $1 million. So that's just to give an idea of funders are doing, and when we call funders, we only talk about government. One big issue that Canada has is VC money, private money into AgriTech. AgriTech is not sexy. AgriTech does not give them a return on investment of 30% in 5 years. The return on investment in AgriTech is very low, and it takes probably 10 years. And most investors are not interested in funding those innovations. And then comes one of the barriers, according to those VCs, is, well, we don't really have field trials. We are not sure if that innovation really is going to be a good investment for us, not only the return, but is it really something that the farmers are going to adopt or the consumer is going to adopt? So we are trying to work with partners, both in the government and the private sector and VCs, so that they understand that having a more collaborative approach where we can introduce these innovations to both VCs and farmers and show that adoption is a smart solution for everybody, that investment is worth some money being injected by these corporations or VCs. Very hard to do, a very slow process. We have worked the entire year with roundtables across Canada. We've been to 8 provinces, and we are finishing our summit in November here. And what we basically did is something that has never happened in Canada before. We put all the ecosystem players together in one room. We got startups, government, regulators, VCs, universities, research, everybody. And we said, what are the barriers for each one of you? And how can we work together to help it? And the reports that are about to come out, most of the barriers provincially and nationally are very similar. They all end up in funding, but for different reasons. And the other thing is all the regulatory processes in Canada are very long and very expensive, and we lose lots of innovation to the United States. And they get, in 2 years, they get investment 5 times bigger than they do in Canada. They can turn their company into a $40 million company in about 3, 4, 5 years, whereas in Canada, that would take 10 to 12 years. So the investment landscape is, I would say, challenging. The government, we actually have a great relationship with them, and I think what they're giving us is helpful, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. In those examples I gave you that we helped 29 companies, 47 companies, $2 million, the ask was in around 10 and 11 million dollars, because when we have the funding available, we send messages out to the ecosystem and social media, and we open call for applications. And we usually get over 100 startups applying for funding. And the money we have, we can only support 9, 10, 15. And usually the request is over 10 or 11 million dollars. And the government is only giving us anywhere between 2.5 and 6.5 million, which is still, appreciated, and we do accelerate companies. But again, there isn't enough support. There isn't enough, money behind that could help push that. The government is telling us that they will change a little bit the way they'll be financing accelerators like ourselves, research institutions, and so on.
Carla, I'm sorry for interrupting you again, but we finish in 30 seconds.
I can.
Thank you very much.
So what I was going to wrap up with is the future of AgTech funding in Canada requires partnerships with corporations, private money, and the money will keep coming in as long as the government doesn't change. When the government changes, you never know what's going to happen, and everything could be cut. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bueno, very well. Let us continue then on this race to present. We are now going to give the floor to Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel. No, let's continue with this marathon. To just kind of break the ice on this dynamic a little bit. I will, and also because I'm very short, so I can't see my screen. I'm gonna have to stand up, and also to face the challenge of the 6-7 minutes, I will also try to follow the line of the people who spoke before me, and I'll speak in English a little bit, so my apologies.
Con Mercy Corps Ventures.
I'm Dan Block. I'm a partner of Socio Ventures. Will you show my presentation on screen? Well,
to start, so Mercy Corps Ventures, what we do is look to support high impact visionary entrepreneurs that want to scale solutions that can drive meaningful impact at scale. Perfect. We were founded in 2015 as the impact investment arm of Mercy Corps, which is one of the leading largest global humanitarian organizations, NGOs in the world, operates across 40 countries in most continents, including in Latin America, has a presence in principally in Colombia, Guatemala, Venezuela, several countries in the Caribbean. And we were started with the vision to be able to bring a private sector solution alongside the nonprofit work that Mercy Corps was doing to be able to support cutting edge technologies that have the potential to drive significant and meaningful impact, and to help those technologies scale both with a scale both commercially as well as from an impact standpoint. Went all the way right to the end. As a team, we're a global team. We invest primarily in Africa and Latin America. In Latin America, on the ventures team, we have people in Colombia and Mexico and Ecuador, and supported by people like me based in the US. Before getting into exactly what we do, I just wanted to start briefly sort of with the why. Our focus is around, at Mercy Corps Ventures, is around climate resilience. We see that those that are being most affected by climate change are those that typically have the least to do with causing climate change, and oftentimes don't have the resources to be able to respond to those challenges. And so our focus, rather than investing specifically on solutions to mitigate the amount of carbon going into the atmosphere, is the smaller segment that's not getting as much attention. The adaptation and resilience for those that are being affected today, yesterday, and increasingly more exponentially as we go on. The statistics and the projections are quite clear around the effects that climate change is going to have when it comes to poverty, and also where the brunt of the costs are going to be borne, which is in emerging markets. So, as thesis-driven investors, we focus on 3 different themes within climate adaptation and resilience that have a lot of overlaps. The first is adaptive agriculture and food systems. The second is what we call inclusive fintech or inclusive climate fintech. And the third is climate smart technologies. Many of the solutions we invest in touch multiple themes here. I'm not going to go into the detail for all of them, but since this is the agriculture conference, we'll spend a minute just on the adaptive agriculture and food systems thesis, where we're looking at solutions that can help those that are a third of the global food supply chain in smallholder farmers increase the productivity and the sustainability of their production to be able to continue to compete and be participants in the evolving global value chain. So we invest in solutions from water access, regenerative agriculture, precision AgTech solutions, a lot in the fintech, access to finance, access to insurance, and many other sections here. We include fintech as well because we believe that access to digital financial services is an essential element to be able to drive access to continuity amidst climate disruptions and climate shocks. there's a lot of research that we look to build on around the importance of digital financial services to allow users to be able to continue to transact, get access to capital after shocks, to be able to respond more quickly, and to thrive. And within our climate smart technologies thesis, one of the key themes among many that we look at is driving lower costs of data and how that data can be used to provide solutions that otherwise wouldn't be affordable or accessible to the segments of the population that we're focused on. In terms of what we do, I'm just going to spend a minute on this slide. We have multiple different toolkits in the same way that some of the others have presented, because we realize that the solution sets for climate change, while they're pressing, they require a different type of support than maybe traditional solutions. We have a patient capital fund, which allows us to support entrepreneurs along their growth and scaling journey. Today, we've invested in over 50 companies that have gone on to raise more than $465 million in follow-on capital. We support them with a venture platform team that helps them to define, drive, and scale their impact, as well as their commercial presence across countries, markets, and continents. And then for the technologies and the innovations that haven't yet made their way to smallholder farmers or to underserved workers, we have a venture lab, and there we provide grants of up to $100,000 to support the piloting and testing out of new technologies or existing technologies at the frontier innovation curve to be able to prove out their impact potential and build the knowledge base for their scaling up. We measure impact quite rigorously and try to share as transparently as we possibly can, the learnings that we're having and those from others in the ecosystem. This is a snapshot of our portfolio. I underlined in green some of the companies in Latin America. Maybe to just highlight a couple, we invested in a company called Vercor, which is an agri-fintech business in Mexico, in Pula, which is one of the leading insurance companies providing climate insurance in Africa, and has since expanded into Latin America. And of course, our favorite of all time, Satellites on Fire, with Franco here that presented earlier. We have a global portfolio across multiple different continents. In Latin America, our companies touch 16 different countries. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but one of the things that's been interesting for us is seeing the scale of solutions across multiple different markets. Ignitia is a company we invested in when they were operating in Africa. They provide hyper-local weather forecasting and tailored recommendations to farmers in the tropical regions. They moved into Brazil a few years ago and are now expanding across Latin America. Pula is the insurance case I just mentioned. And Meridia is a company that's providing traceability solutions for supply chains across emerging markets, specifically related to the EU deforestation-free regulation. I just wanted to highlight one example from our venture lab to make that a bit more concrete. Number 2 here.
Número 2 aquí, eso fue hace unos años, lanzamos un piloto para probar el uso de contratos inteligentes en blockchain para facilitar pagos más rápidos para los productores que pudieran cerrar la brecha de seguros en cuanto a cobertura. Trabajamos con una compañía que se llama Perfector Africa, un piloto con 1,200 productores en Kenia para darles pagos cuando hay shocks de clima en menos de 24 horas, en vez de tener que pasar por un proceso manual.
Rates from the farmers that were getting insured by over 30%. And yeah, just to close, I think we maybe will get to some of these points more in the conversation afterwards. But I think a couple themes I just wanted to highlight for us that are important as we're looking at opportunities that make sense for the mass market is taking a global mindset around climate resilience. We look for solutions, the best solutions, and figure out how they can scale and be used in a broad array of markets, rather than trying to see sort of finding local solutions in all cases. Second, we realize it takes time. There need to be a blended type of different flavors of capital, as many others have mentioned here, and I guess important to mention as well, not all solutions are necessarily venture backable, and so finding the right type of capital for the right type of solution is incredibly important. For us, I know there's a conference around digital agriculture. We think digital is important, but we also think that the what we call a tech and touch combination is really essential. We look for companies that are very user-centered and human-centered in the way they design their products to make it accessible for users. And then, lastly, I think I just highlighted in bold here a couple recent reports that we came across that I thought were quite interesting. One, Bayer, that just published the first in a series of reports around their ag playbook, and a second from a company called 60 Decibels that did a really interesting survey around smallholder farmer uptake of digital services. Just to say, I think the events like this are great, and the more we can do to be, transparent, sharing what's working, what's not, finding opportunities where there are companies that are doing similar things in different markets to either collaborate, to have M&A, to share best practices so that we're being efficient with the critical challenges that are increasing day to day. So, con eso, muchas gracias. Y pues, sí.
And with that, thank you very much, and let's continue this conversation. Thank you very much, Daniel. Now, Ariane from SP Ventures. Thank you very much, Ariane, for being here. And thank you, Federico. And it's a pleasure being here with all of you. My name is Ariane. I'm a partner at SP Ventures for 15 years working in technologies with agro. I've traveled pretty much throughout all Latin America, and I've had the opportunity to see technologies, Agro Club, and I have the possibility to say we have excellent companies. So it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you and to share this table with many of the co-investors of our portfolio in Venture, Mercy, Tillab, and also the guys from Fall Line. So we start with a brief introduction of SB. Help me with the presentation. I'll tell a bit about our story. We started as a generalist fund in Brazil. I think this is very important. We started 14 years ago as a venture capital fund. When we discuss venture capital in the region, we talk a lot about this, especially that there's lack of resources. But when we speak about venture capital in this region, it's an industry that is just starting. We're saying that in Brazil it started 15 years ago, and in Mexico it must be approximately between 7 or 8 years where it now has better development. So it's an industry which is incipient in our region, so it's very important to discuss. I cannot see the...
No se preocupen. Yo les voy a contar nuestra historia sin
I'll share a story without the presentation. Well, in the case, we started in 2010 with government resources. Specifically, we didn't have a specific fund. We used government funds, and the objective is to develop entrepreneurship in Sao Paulo. And approximately in 2014 is when we raised our first fund. It was a fund of approximately 105 million, which is 20 million, equivalent to $20 million. And 70% of those resources went specifically to agro, and 30% were still generalists. And something very important came about here. Since we started investing with government funds, our team realized that obviously there were some companies and there was a specific need in the sector, in the region, to have a fund that will support agro companies specifically. And this is because the force that exists in agro in our region, 30% of Brazil's GDP. And you can see this if you use Brazil as a proxy. But we see this absolutely in all regions in Latin America where GDP is very relevant. And that's where we started focusing specifically in agro. Fast forward in 2020, we raised a fund of $58 million. And this $58 million fund, and now we changed the specific profile of our LPs. Now we brought in global organizations. So now we have organizations as Mosaic, Adiseo, BAS, all these organizations investing in the region, investing in entrepreneurs, and with the understanding that in this region of Latin America is where great opportunities come. We have Yara, we have Bunge, Syngenta, specifically in this fund, and we have another part, not the force of DFIs. So we have GEF, Chara, IDB are a specific part of this fund. And I believe that the balance, specific balance here is important. There are development funds, but there are also corporations that are looking at Latin America as a region worthwhile investing in. And so it's important to understand what is happening in the region. A very important topic, and especially for us who are here, is to change not only seeds, but we sell specifically to the region. And something very important is that agro, to see agro as an asset class from the investment point of view, very resilient. And we're able to see this in the latest moments of greater economic crisis in Latin America. And I would love for you to compare the performance of agro. When you see this, well, you can see we have the challenge agro. There's sometimes that's a smirk that I wonder if it's this. It's very good from the economic standpoint to go to the numbers and to start understanding that resilience in agro in this region, because that will help us understand that it's an easy sale from the economic interest point of view and the impact to the region. Obviously, tropical agriculture, I don't need to tell you that, the benefit that exists of having pretty much is a playfield for entrepreneurs. There's two harvest seasons in some areas. There's a number of diversification of crops, of diseases also. So what comes from Latin America could be taken to other regions. And we have seen specifically platforms from Israel, from US, trying to bring those platforms to Latin America. It's highly expensive. And when they're trying to adjust their algorithms to this region, in which they encounter no longer one harvest, but two harvest times, the La Niño harvest is so much greater than May, so the platform no longer works internationally. So that's where we have a very big advantage. So if we know the systems of tropical agriculture and the way entrepreneurs see this holistically and the difficulties and challenges that exist here, well, they can work, and they are working. We see the latest acquisition, Joseres. It's a Belgium company. Last year, one of the greatest acquisition for $500 million last year came from a Latin American company. So from the sustainable model standpoint, we focus in 30% of agro as a villain in emissions that exist that come from agro. So agro has the possibility to become the hero. We see that from the point of view of the use of technologies, and we saw this here with many of the examples that were showcased here. So there is a possibility now to reduce, to mitigate, to obviously bring adaptation technologies, which are very important. And finally, we invest in pretty much the whole agro and food chain. We have cases that go from biotechnology all the way through delivery to the consumer. Agro is absolutely, and it's very interesting because if we look at it, it's pretty much a mirror of the greater thesis in the world. So we focus a lot in fintech. We invest together in Vericor. In Mexico today, we have one of the biggest digital banks. The first one in Brazil, AgroLend, which is part of our portfolio. Biologics, which is the discussion of the moment in the world. We have specific platforms on biotechnology. This is something that Brazil is one of the bigger examples, and Latin America throughout. So we focus in the whole chain, but we see more specifically fintech, things related to biotechnology platforms, and finally, marketplaces, and of course, efficiency throughout the chain. I hope I was brief, and I do apologize for not showing my presentation, but we have time to discuss this. Very clear, thank you. Arenas, we have still two presentations. I'll give the floor to Michael Mancilla from Inventure Argentina to then finish with Enrique Henning.
¿Podemos poner la presentación de Michael?
Qué difícil hablar a esta hora.
It's very difficult to present at this time.
Me voy a parar.
I'm going to stand.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you, Fede and Aika, for this opportunity. And for us, we're an Argentinian fund, relatively new. It's an honor, a matter of pride to be here. Who we are in Venture has a specificity of being a fund created by farmers and some professionals, entrepreneurs of agro. In Argentina, we developed this federal fund because these are not farmers from one specific region, but from different states, different provinces, and who want to invest in technology to be able to develop solutions to improve our competitiveness, to gain efficiency, to gain sustainability, and to improve the way in which we produce food. And we have APRESID, which is the Association of Direct Planting, almost 2,000 promoters in this association. And prior to saying investing in new technologies, we spent 3 years analyzing various opportunities for investment. We went from biofuels to niche export, premium products, and none of them convinced as much as a possibility to bet for innovation, something unthinkable back then, considering that many of you here are entrepreneurs and you know the difficulties that exist to speak about technologies with farmers. And that in this case, that not only deciding to become friends with technology and to invest was a huge challenge. As I said, APRESID, where in every geographic point you can see in the map, we have a regional network of producers, 40 regionals. APRESID is a leading company in technology, in innovation, in agriculture processes, together with CREA, which is our benchmark associations for agriculture, not only in the continent, but also globally. It has very many international partnerships. And this came from APRESID. It was 16 partners who decided not only to invest capital, but also time to fulfill the different roles of or functions of the fund. And besides that, there's referral investors, a president, a treasurer, Nicolas, for instance, the agriculture director, nationwide, among other players, and a bit about venture is also related to coming together of two sectors that are most successful in Argentina, which is the agro sector, together with the economy of knowledge. And the few times these 2 points have come together, they've created companies like Bioceres that is valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, who has bought a multinational like Rizobacter, which also is in NASDAQ, but it has another company, Mulek, which is also part of the stock market. And Don Mario company has 45% of the soy genetics from this company from Argentina, who recently bought KWS, Argentina, Brazil. And what many people don't know is that these companies were founded and initially invested by producers and members of AproSeed. So these random or isolated cases that have happened, what we try to do is systematize this, try to bet for innovation in a systemic way. We're able to do it in other opportunities, and we want to do it again, no longer in a specific project, but as part of a portfolio. And what do we invest, as well as SP Ventures and several of the funds that spoke before me, in all type of technology that impacts the agri-food chain. We're always talking about triple impact solutions with a global projection in early stages, always with sound equipment, with validated technology, and something we, I think, was one of the best decisions we made, is the possibility to co-invest with other funds that had greater experience, like many of them that are joining us today. In only 20 months, we have co-invested in 9 of these companies. 3 are joining us today. Satellites on Fire, Callis, Sensify. Quick summary of our portfolio. We have chosen this among 130 that were assessed only in Argentina. All these are in commercial stage with international operations. Technologies are validated in the market, present in 32 countries and 4 continents. These are exponentially growing in their invoicing and human resource and technological milestones. And their clients go from small producers to great multinational companies, and the objective of the portfolio is to reach 20 companies. So far, we have brought together 80 investors, and before the end of the year, we'll exceed 100. And we're trying to build a high-value network, which is professionals of agro sciences and business, entrepreneurs, protagonists of agro organizations in the country. Our investors are presidents of agro organizations. Not only the opposite partners can participate, we also have members from CREA, from various chambers of the different type of crops. And I think we have as a strength that we have great knowledge about the problems and needs of the agri-food sector, especially of producers and the companies that are in the immediate or initial chains of this, links of this chain, and where users, validators, and disseminators of these technologies have proceeded, led one of the most important congresses with participation of all these startups in this congress, places of great visibility, and in all these regional networks. I mentioned we have local, global, national links, very important partnerships. A fund, when it was created, was with Endeavor, TCA, which is a leading company in venture capital, Argentina. And we are at most of the events that are held in Argentina. We try to generate these necessary conversations for there to be more technology, more adoption, more development, and to definitely have agri-food systems that are more efficient, productive, and sustainable. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Flawless. We're interested in making visible this initiative that came from agro producers in Argentina. And to finish the last presentation, Enrique. Enrique, and thank you for waiting till now. And now you have the floor to tell us about FIDA. Thank you. Can I share my screen, right? Yes.
Me avisas cuando la puedas ver ya.
Let me know when you can see my screen. We can see your screen.
Adelante.
Go ahead.
Dale, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. And Federico for this invitation. Good afternoon to everyone. And since I'm the last, I'll try to be as brief as possible to be able to close with the presentation and go on to our discussions. My name is Enrique Hennis. I'm the director of the office, multi-country office of FIDA in Panama. And to share a bit of what FIDA is, for you to have context and to know our perspective. FIDA is one of the few United Nations agencies, or the only one, and of financial companies dedicated exclusively to end poverty and transforming the life of the poorest in rural areas. This fund was established in 1977, and now we have 176 member states in 5 regions in the world. We are a company dedicated to assemble financing for development, catalyzing rural development in a sustainable way. Obviously, the idea is to end rural poverty and inclusive and sustainable inclusive rural transformation. We focus mainly in 2 sustainable development goals, ending poverty and zero hunger. I'll share an experience, which is a second version of AgTech, which is a donation that FIDA is starting a second version. And the idea for this donation is basically to fund technology companies of FinTech, AgTech, that provide a specific solution to a problem or several problems, depending on this objective FIDA is focused on. We start with identifying first the needs of the farmers who benefit from the programs we finance through governments. And once we have identified these needs for services mainly, that's where we work together with fintech and agri-tech companies to find a specific solution for them. So basically, these are productions that have potential for a large scale up in rural areas that offer market solutions to specific problems. Obviously, these solutions are focused on small farmers, young women, and also indigenous people. Financial institutions that serve in rural areas, and any type of rural organization or rural organization with specific problems. The second version of AgTech will be held in Bolivia, El Salvador, Honduras, Peru. We'll have a similar version in Asia, in countries where we'll test the AgTech model. And as I said, in the second version we have of AgTech, the first version, we had the opportunity to finance 15 companies, 15 startups. We reached over 30,000 farmers with solutions. It was very successful, as well as other panelists. We had great demand for resources. Basically, in the first call, we had over 120 companies, and we ended up funding 15 companies. And the second version will have a very similar program. We'll fund 15 startups, which will be part of the mentorship and acceleration program with the support of this donation is executed or funded by FIDA, executed by Parkasse Stiftung, German foundation, and they are the ones that carry the acceleration program with the various companies. And one of the variants in this innovation version is that we're not only funding these companies and supporting them in their process of providing services in rural areas, but will also complement, and this is part of the lessons learned from the first version, is the lack of capacity at rural level for programmers, for people who understand technology, for managers for technological projects. So we're carrying out a dual training program to improve the capacity of youth, especially in rural areas, a youth who is interested in technology, who can become employees of these different technology companies or of organizations who will require adopting technological solution. So this also brings a need to provide work alternatives to many people, especially in Central America, who have been relocated from the U.S., who have returned or who have been deported back to the region. So there's a large group with certain skills, obviously with the language, who are lacking productive activities or job opportunities that would be interesting for them. So all the work we do has a double function. And the third component of this new Innovatech version is, as you have made evident, is the need to have also a center or a facility of innovation, of rural impact, and ongoing financing. The idea with this donation at the end is to establish either a fund or a facility where we continue supporting these types of companies. We work with donations. Initially, the Innovation Center would work with different types of financial instruments with a lot of articulation with impact funds and other types of investments.
Novatec, una comisión de estación, dependiendo de las necesidades que se presente para atender las necesidades de los productores de Argentina, ¿no? Obviamente, también viene todo el proceso de mentoría, como lo mencioné anteriormente. Es un programa de mentoría bastante extenso de 8 meses, que acompaña a todas estas empresas en su proceso de mejorar la solución y refinar para poder servir a este tipo de población que usualmente es mucho más abajo del target de las empresas estas, ¿no? Una de las cosas que también el proyecto hace muy bien es ayudar a entender la realidad rural a estas empresas, porque trabajar en área urbana no es lo mismo que trabajar en un área rural, especialmente para soluciones de fintech. Entonces se ayuda mucho a entender esa realidad y a poder adecuarse a toda esa nueva realidad que van a enfrentar algunas de estas nuevas que ya están ahí, a mejorar todos sus procesos, digamos, de operación, etcétera, ¿no? Otra de las ventajas que se tiene, y es una de las cosas que funcionamos muy bien, es que el FIRA le da acceso a los proyectos apoyados por los bancos y básicamente al cumplir una necesidad que viene de los productores que apoyamos, se tiene ya una demanda específica y clientes, obviamente, para estas cosas, ¿no? Entonces, no solamente vender tu solución, sino ya tienes un grupo que está demandando esa solución, ¿no? Obviamente, el ecosistema que se ha ido generando con la primera versión y con la segunda, en términos de diferentes partners de financiamiento, aceleradoras, jugadoras, otro tipo de financiadores, empresas de tecnología que han apoyado también en todo este proceso, es parte del ecosistema que se está desarrollando y que cada una de estas empresas puede acceder, ¿no? Y bueno, es algo que muchas veces no se da la importancia para estas empresas el contar con ya clientes específicos con demandas hace la diferencia, ¿no? Hemos tenido algunos testimonios de empresas que ya han pasado por ahí que los van a ir escuchando más adelante. En el programa ya la segunda versión acaba de empezar, estamos ya en la primera convocatoria. Va a haber 4 convocatorias de esta etapa, como decimos, estamos buscando empresas de AgTech, que que ya tengan, que ya estén establecidas, que tengan un modelo de negocios probado, pero que quieran ejecutar en áreas rurales, o si vienen, digamos, en una área urbana, o si ya están en el área rural, pues profundizar el tipo de servicios, ¿no? Bueno, ahí está toda la información para el código, para si quieren tener más información, especialmente si hay algunas empresas de conflicto interesadas. Con esto acabo, Federico. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Enrique. Bueno, cuando armamos esta sesión sabíamos que iba a ser maratónica. Lo pudimos prever. No sé si tanto, pero sabíamos. Pero nos interesaba de todas maneras que queden expuestos como distintos modelos y distintos mecanismos de financiamiento en la región. Entonces, eso ya no es poco. Con todo lo que se dijo, no es poco. No tenemos el tiempo de interactuar que hubiésemos querido nunca. En realidad, hay el tiempo suficiente para interactuar todo lo que uno quiere. Pero sí creo que tenemos algún minuto antes de cerrar para un par de preguntas que en lo posible pedimos que apunten a la cuestión más general. Si hay dudas específicas, por ejemplo, con la convocatoria que contaba Enrique recién, o con lo que le falta buscar a Maico para llegar a las 20, desde las 11 que le faltan a las 20, los tienen acá, los pueden preguntar después, le pueden escribir a Enrique. Sí, ahí va Jerez. Sí, pido que sean preguntas más bien genéricas, así aprovechamos a sacar la visión de quienes están aquí. Así que, Jere, gracias. Adelante.
Ahí, sí. Bueno, muchas gracias a todos por las presentaciones. Quería, si me tomo el derecho de hacer dos preguntas escuetas. Uno ligado a los unicornios, o digamos a los no unicornios que hay en la región de AgTech. Bueno, ¿por qué piensan que todavía no hubo empresas que llegasen a esa evaluación, ni tampoco muy cerca? Y ustedes como fondos, de repente, si cambiarían alguna estrategia o algo distinto en su dinámica de inversión con esto en perspectiva. Eso por un lado, tema unicornios y sus estrategias, y después fondos públicos. ¿Qué espacios ven de colaboración con fondos públicos, nacionales o multilaterales? Gracias.
Gracias, Jere. Creo que con esa nos podemos quedar como hasta las 8 de la noche. Y me gustaría que todos, o prácticamente todos, en especial los VCs, puedan hacer un comentario, pero como sabrán, debería ser lo más breve y enfocado posible para que justamente todos tengan la chance de dar una visión respecto a la pregunta que plantea Jere, que para mí es medular. No sé quién quiere empezar.
Gracias, Fede, por la pregunta inquieta y por la pregunta que también refleja preguntas que siempre recibimos. Desde nuestra parte, a ver, primero que nada, validamos que no necesariamente una empresa tiene que llegar a ser un unicornio. Puede no ser un unicornio y puede ser extremadamente competitiva y puede ser una excelente inversión. También sabemos que nuestro sector es un sector particular, es un sector que está atado a ciclos productivos, que los crecimientos son más lentos. También sabemos que, como bien dijo Mariana excelentemente, es una industria nueva. Todo esto hace que hoy por hoy no tengamos unicornio. ¿Los vamos a tener? No lo sé. ¿Nos tira para atrás las inversiones? No, porque lo que apostamos es no solamente a tener empresas que sean muy competitivas en el mercado, sino que crezcan lo máximo posible dentro del apoyo que le podamos dar. Hoy por hoy, ¿qué divisamos en materia de exit? Probablemente los exits salgan para el lado de M&As, más que nada, los mercados en los cuales se van a colocar este tipo de empresas van a ser específicamente Europa, Brasil, Estados Unidos, y es ahí donde estamos enfocados hoy en acompañar a nuestras startups. Si tenemos un unicornio, bienvenido, y si no, no es lo que nos desvela. Realmente creo que no tiene que ser la meta de la industria tener unicornios, sino acompañar al máximo posible el crecimiento de las startups, la digitalización del sector y también entender que detrás de estas inversiones hay inversiones no solo por retorno financiero, sino hay inversiones, como bien lo dijo Maico, por una cuestión de digitalizar el sector, de ayudar que el sector, que los productores y que todo lo que es la innovación distribuida sinceramente ocurra. Es ahí, por lo menos, de nosotros donde estamos enfocados y donde nos gusta trabajar independientemente de si llegamos a tener un unicornio, que esperamos lo tengamos, pero no es por, como digo, lo que nos desvela o nos quita el sueño en estos momentos.
Gracias, Tere. ¿Alguna otra opinión, mirada?
Sí, brevemente de nuestra parte, creo que ya se ha hablado muchísimo también de los unicornios y en nuestra industria. Ya fueron más valorizados los unicornios. Ya vimos varios unicornios cayendo del cielo. Creo que ahora nos interesan más los camellos. Los camellos son los que son más resilientes y creo que en Latinoamérica específicamente por la cuestión de la visión del emprendedor, ¿no? O sea, son mucho más resilientes, son cost effective, están pensando obviamente en una cuestión obviamente de ser unicornio. El unicornio a veces es mucho más un ego, ¿no? O sea, es el ego, fui unicornio, pero son unicornios de papel. O sea, lo que estamos buscando en realidad son retornos reales, o sea, empresas que están dando unit economics reales. Entonces, ahí es donde nosotros estamos enfocándonos y creo que como industria es lo que estamos entendiendo.
Gracias, Irene. Maiko, breve.
Bien, no, coincido, pero quiero hacer hincapié también en que es una industria relativamente nueva, ¿cierto? Y no sé si es nueva y es la más atomizada de todos. No hay nada más federal en cada uno de los países que la cantidad que el mercado de productores, ¿no? Entonces, eso obviamente tiene dificultades, tiene otros tiempos. Todavía no hay tantas estadísticas propiamente del corto tiempo, pero creo que vamos a tener quizás menores tasas de mortandad también que otras industrias. No lo sabemos, pero creo que va a ser el caso. No sé si el resto coincide. Y con respecto a los fondos públicos, voy a ser concreto. Yo creo que eh, es importante generar fondos públicos que coinviertan con fondos institucionales, con fondos profesionales, porque pueden acompañar, o sea, tienen expertise para elegir proyectos, para acompañarlos. Y ya charlamos el día lunes con la exposición de la CEPAL, lo que podríamos ganar invirtiendo en esto en impacto como países, como economías, pero también lo que podríamos perder si no lo hacemos. Entonces, creo que es totalmente estratégico. Quienes invierten en esto, creo que
those who invest in this won't necessarily establish a priority in the economics, but I think it will be a much greater impact.
Gracias, Maiko.
Thank you, Michael.
Daniel
Daniel?
y Ricardo.
Ricardo?
Pues no, yo solo iba a agregar
I
también
just
que
wanted to
como,
add that
de nuestra perspectiva,
from our
es
perspective,
un tema difícil también
there's a
de
difficult
llevar
topic
soluciones
to bring solutions
mercado, y creo
from market to
que
market.
una ventaja
And
que
I think
tienen,
that
por
one
ejemplo,
advantage that
fintechs que han tenido
fintechs
más éxito en
have,
eso,
the most successful
es
fintechs,
que,
has
es
been
que
that
como la adquisición de usuarios es mucho más rápido y
acquiring
como el
users
feedback
is much
es mucho más
faster
rápido.
and feedback is much
Pero
faster.
como
But
bien ha dicho varios acá,
as several people said here,
o sea, como el ciclo para
the cycle
escalar las soluciones
to
toma más tiempo.
give scalability
Y
to
creo que
solution
por
is
eso
longer.
muchos están
That
viendo
is
como
why I believe many
distintos
people are
modelos
looking at different
de
models
inversión
for
que
investment
aporta eso.
which provide that.
Y bueno, entonces no
Very well.
no
So,
pierde la fe.
I mean, do not lose faith is what I'm getting at.
Muy breve para
I'll be very brief
los fondos públicos.
to focus on the question with regards to public funds. I think that there's a great opportunity by understanding the state's agenda and to figure out whether it's specializing on certain specific items. When they're specializing on certain specific items, there's an important vehicle that can be aligned and mobilized. In the case of Costa Rica, for example, you start seeing NAMAs, and you can see that technology and innovation by startups can support to fulfill that role. And this can be a very strong argument to leverage co-financing and to mobilize further public funds. Thank you, Ricardo. To finish this round of questions, perhaps I'll ask Scott to see if he has any comments with regards to the slower growth that one would have expected in prior years from AgTech companies. And then maybe Carla and Enrique can make a further comment on public-private partnerships in financing.
Sorry, the interpretation just kicked in a minute ago, so I didn't really get the question.
Oh, okay. So we are talking about the unicorns, or the lack of unicorns. So what are your thoughts about that? And if that, the fact is that there is a kind of lack of unicorns could or is affecting your investment strategy?
Yeah, so the lack of unicorns is, I think, related to a whole bunch of factors, and one of them being that agriculture has to succeed. Sorry, there's big feedback here. Agriculture has to exist over a wide variety of conditions and scenarios, and so it's really hard to create technology that makes profound change on a unicorn scale. So we're definitely looking at smaller opportunities at this point, and expecting lower multiples and longer time frames. We're not looking for unicorns anymore. We did have at one point 4 companies that were valued over $1 billion during that SPAC craze, and they are not they're not worth anywhere near that now. So we're not looking at that being some sort of goal or criteria for when we're looking at investment. We're, as I stated earlier in my presentation, we're looking at early stage that has proven technology in a wide range or a suitable range of conditions and a clear path to commercialization. We're looking at that specifically now rather than these really big, home runs that are going to be even more elusive than ever.
Muchas gracias, Scott. Y entonces, para terminar, sí, le paso la palabra a Carla y Enrique. Y si en lo posible pueden enfocar sus comentarios en la colaboración o oportunidades de sinergia público-privado en el financiamiento.
So here in Canada, it's I guess I would just say the same as everybody's saying. It's very hard to find a unicorn in AgriTech. And we had a couple in Canada that they were for a couple of years, and the government took a big hit, and they were one of the worst failures in history of Canadian investment. And a couple of reasons is they were in the areas of boom. So people thought cannabis would be big because we were making it legal in Canada, and greenhouse space and things like that. So I would say, again, in Canada, investors are very risk averse, and to really find a AgriTech that could be a unicorn is, I think, is like a needle in a haystack. So unfortunately, the government is focusing more on providing funding to accelerate commercialization that's actually be able to adapt to be adopted, and it will really bring some results and impact. So lots of patient capital around here, and not really, looking for unicorns, but looking for solid investments that actually are going to be well adopted in the market and really bring some results for the country as a good investment as a whole.
Thank you very much, Carla. Enrique, último comentario.
Last comment. Thank you, Rodrigo. I think that here we have a great opportunity to cooperate between public and private sector. Innovatech is one example of this. We, with the companies we are financing, we've generated interest on the government side to finance other companies using public resources. What's hard here is to grow that relationship, and it has to be based on mutual benefit, both for the private sector as for the problem that the government is seeking to ameliorate. And that is where I say, inasmuch as the needs and bottlenecks are identified, if you identify the bottlenecks the government is facing, for example, we had a problem in El Salvador of financial education. We found a company that supported us on this topic, and the government itself decided to scale up that project. So the opportunities are out there. Obviously, they're very specific with very specific solutions. But therein, I just wanted to make a comment on unicorns. We, on the private sector, we're always seeking a unicorn, right? In terms of performance or return on investments or performance. But it would be interesting to have these unicorns on an impact benefit. And that's what we're seeking as in Novatech. We're seeking companies that are going to become unicorns in terms of impact, in terms of the amount of people they're going to help.
Muchísimas gracias, Enrique.
Well, thank you very much, Enrique. I can see everyone's face, and I think it's time to end this session today. Everyone's very tired. We want to share more information, but we're going to leave it on the table so that you can think about it. And as we said from the very beginning here, after this, we'll be able to prepare recommendations or proposals for each of the AgTechs member states. Thank you all very much for participating, both here in person as those who participated online. My apologies, this went a bit over the agenda, but we value your presence here and your time. And we close today's session. And after the closing, we'll make some brief clerical announcements.